Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today, we have yet another great episode of this wonderful show. Today is Thursday, August 21st, 2025. It's the last episode before I'm back in school and get to listen to all of my professors complain about how awful our country is becoming under the fascist dictatorship of Donald J. Trump. That's why I got the MAGA hat on today. Gotta represent. We've got a lot of great stories to cover, a lot of positive things happening. Surprising to see. I mean, I guess not surprising when you have someone like Trump in charge. There's gonna be good stuff, especially the people that he has around him. But I don't know. I felt like I hadn't seen anything that really got me excited recently. Our first story certainly does have me excited for the future of our country. So, if you are not already subscribed to all of our social media accounts, you can find those in the description of this video. You can find it in the link in my bio, in my X account. Make sure to follow us on all those different places. But yeah, let's go and get into our very first story of today, and that comes from the Daily Wire. So Tulsi Gabbard is back in the news, folks. So I just finished Tulsi's book, and I thought it was great, found it really enjoyable. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me from her book, which was published, I think at the beginning of 2024, late 2023, I forget exactly when it came out, but it seems like it was about a year ago. It was well before she was associated with the Trump campaign, is that so much that she talked about in her book, she's actively doing now, right? She spoke a lot about cleaning out our intelligence bureaucracy and getting rid of a lot of these agents who have made up permanent Washington, D.C. for decades now. And she's done that. She's revoked security clearances from all of these folks, right? And now, with our first story, she is reducing the Department of National Intelligence, or the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, is reducing the agency by almost 50%, saving the American taxpayers $700 million. Now, this is a big deal, one, because of the money that's being saved, right? Whenever we can save money in government, it's going to be a good thing. We need to spend a lot less money in our government if we ever want to become profitable again, right? We're running well below our means right now, or well above our means, I guess. But more importantly, reducing a system such as the Office of National Intelligence by 50%, that's going to be a big deal in starting to root out permanent Washington from our government, right? Permanent Washington is this not necessarily theory at this point, this fact that we have people in our government that stick around administration to administration to administration who they only advocate for whoever wants to keep them in power, right? And right now, the Democrats are the one who wants to keep them in power, which means they're all friends with the Dems, right? And no matter who's in charge, if that's Obama, if that's Trump, if that's Joe Biden, if that's whoever comes next, right, permanent Washington will always be there, right? That's why when Trump was in office, right, we had all this information coming out that was negative against him from our intelligence bureaucracies. That was completely not true, because permanent Washington was still around to push out these false reports, to create these false dossiers, and to continue working with the Democrats to undermine his administration. That's why it's so important that not only do people like Tulsi Gabbard, but every single cabinet secretary follow through on their promise to the American people and reduce our government size and root out permanent Washington. Even if it means not necessarily reducing the number of employees, but firing a lot of them and bringing in new blood to replace all those people, right? That's going to do so much going forward to keep the presidency alive and to make sure that whoever is in power, they're not being undermined by their own administration, right? And it's one thing to publish reports and to create intelligence that is factual, right? If the president is in fact colluding with Russia, we want to know that, right? Congress wants to know this information. But when that Russia collusion is created by just complete lies and is not factually based in anything, right? That's when it becomes scary. That's when we have an issue. That's when permanent Washington sinks its claws into the meat of the American public and just holds on to it and retains in power for decade after decade after decade. So let's read about what Tulsi Gabbard's doing. Enough rambling on my part. So Tulsi Gabbard ramps ODNI, which is Office of the Director of National Intelligence, reducing agency by almost 50%, saving taxpayers over $700 million. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, love Tulsi so much if you don't already know, will announce Wednesday, well, it has been announced, afternoon, that she is refocusing her agency to aggressively execute its national security mission, shrinking the Office of the Director of National Intelligence nearly 50% and saving hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars. So Gabbard described the changes as ODNI 2.0 in a statement on Wednesday, calling the shift, quote, the start of a new era focused on serving our country, fulfilling our core national security mission with excellence, always grounded in the U.S. Constitution, and ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. So ODNI will be reduced by almost 50% by the end of fiscal year 2025, ultimately saving taxpayers over $700 million per year, senior DNI officials shared with the Daily Wire. This will be done by combining agency centers and reducing personnel. So a message to the ODNI workforce viewed by the Daily Wire states that the changes will reduce personnel by 30 to 40%. So the announcement comes after months-long review of ODNI to ascertain, in accordance with President Donald Trump's executive order, how ODNI could best fulfill its mission to integrate intelligence from and provide oversight over all intelligence community elements to make sure that it provides timely, accurate, and apolitical, most importantly, apolitical intelligence to Trump and lawmakers. That's what's most important. So, quote, action without intelligence is foolish. Intelligence without action is useless, another senior DNI official noted. Quote, every piece of intelligence should inform a policy decision or a military, covert, or diplomatic action, or it is not worth the paper it is written on. Absolutely 100% true. Gabbard and ODNI are also leading coordination across the 18 intelligence community groups to eliminate wasteful contracts and duplicative staff. A declassified DNI fact sheet notes and proposed reductions amount to approximately $1.3 billion in annual recurring costs. Those reductions will be fully realized by the end of fiscal year 2025, according to ODNI. Gabbard argues that ending the weaponization of intelligence and holding bad actors accountable are essential to earning back the trust of the American people. So this is fantastic. So we're rooting out people in our government who do not belong there anymore. We're getting rid of security clearances of people who have stuck around since the Obama administration. Someone needs to tell me why Obama intelligence officials still has security clearances in the year 2025. Can someone actually intelligently tell me why that is the case, right? These people have not held an actual job in the federal government since, 2017, early 2017, January 2017, right? They haven't held jobs in government since then, but yet they still had security clearances. Why is that? So, good for Tulsi Gabbard. We'd love to see it. Office of the Director of National Intelligence 2.0 coming in. Root out permanent Washington. Make intelligence more accurate and safer for the American people. And, love to see it. Let's move on to our next story. So New York Post. So Trump's massive $500 million civil fraud fine in AG Letitia James case thrown out by New York Appeals Court. Love to see it. That case was nothing but a manhunt against Donald Trump to get him to not be the president. Glad to see it's been thrown out. So a New York appeals court Thursday threw out the massive $464 million judgment dealt to President Donald Trump after he was found liable at a civil trial for business fraud. The appellate division, First Department, overturned the whopping fine in the case in which Trump, 79, was found to have fraudulently inflated his net worth. February 2024 ruling from Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron been upheld. The appeals court decision follows a theatrical 11-week trial that threatened to derail Trump's image as a real estate tycoon and brand him as a fraudster as he campaigned to regain the White House. Trial evidence revealed that Trump secured cushy interest rates between 2011 and 2021 after goosing up the value of assets like his Big Apple penthouse and Mar-a-Lago estate on financial papers. Trump's business falsely claimed that his Trump Tower triplex was 30,000 square feet rather than its true size of 11,000 square feet, and used the phony figures to pump up the pad's value to $327 million in 2015 after claiming it was worth $80 million just 4 years earlier, evidence shows. Trump also valued Mar-a-Lago at $517 million on a financial filing, despite his tax broker admitting to listing the state's market value at just $27 million in 2020, a witness revealed. So the ruling comes after some members of the 5-judge appeals panel appeared skeptical in September of the merits of the lawsuit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James, which led to the trial. Judge Peter Moulton called the size of the penalty troubling and questioned if the law James had used to sue Trump, which doesn't technically require someone to be harmed, had morphed into something it was not meant to be. The case rolled the soon-to-be 47 president, who chose to leave the campaign trail for several days to attend the trial, calling the proceedings a political witch hunt and insisting that he did nothing wrong. Trump's lawyers argued that the case had no victims and that sophisticated companies like Deutsche Bank did their own research before entering into the deals and were all paid back in full. Right? So that's the big thing here. And that's why this truly was a political witch hunt is, okay, you can certainly make the argument that, he lied on these records and that's not okay, right? No one should be lying on financial paperwork. That's fine. I hear you out there. But should we really be pulling the running president of the United States into a massive lawsuit that could derail his chance of being the president over the crime of, he upsold the properties that he owns? Oh, and by the way, the bank still gave him his loan, did their own research, and was paid back in full, right? No one was harmed in the crime that they're alleging that Trump committed. So I understand where people have an issue coming from with this. I've never been one here to necessarily defend the character of the president. I think that he's done several things that, I don't love that my president lied on a financial document that went to a bank. That being said, it wasn't like he stole $500 million from a bank and never paid it back, right? It wasn't like he destroyed a company that he lied to and kept their money from it, right? They were paid back in full, according to this article, and no one was harmed. And likely, no one would have been the wiser, or, Deutsche Bank likely knew what the actual values of the properties were, and gave him a loan anyways, right? Who's really to say without going through and fully doing all this, right? I'm just kind of giving you the bullet points from this article. I'm sure that, if you follow this more closely than I have, you probably have more information on it. But I'm just saying here, guys, like, was it really worth it? Imagine what they would have done had they pulled Joe Biden into court as he's running for president, or even now for that matter, right? Joe Biden had classified documents in his home. I recognize this is not the same case here, but they tried to get Trump from having classified documents in his house, right? Joe Biden had the exact same thing, too, that he kept from being vice president, right? He kept for years. And what happened to Joe Biden? Absolutely nothing, right? We know that Hillary Clinton had a private email server that she was mishandling classified information on. What happened to her? Absolutely nothing, right? So it's been made clear to us as the American people that whenever a crime is committed, if it's done by a Democrat, nobody bats an eye, right? But once done by a Republican, now there's an issue, right? So anyways, that's all I got to say about that. Good for the appeals court. This is a win for Trump's team, and just ultimately goes to show that he didn't commit any crimes. So with that, let's move on to our next story. So Another story from the Daily Wire. We finally have the conclusive ending to the saga that is the Texas redistricting dilemma. So for that, all that for nothing, rogue Texas Dems brought to heel as new congressional map passes. So the Texas House approved a new congressional map on Wednesday that is expected to net Republicans 5 additional seats in the House of Representatives after the upcoming midterm elections. The map, which passed with all 88 Republican House members voting in favor, caps a week-long saga in which dozens of Democrat lawmakers fled the state to prevent the state legislature from conducting business. The new map will head to Governor Greg Abbott's desk for final signature. By the way, they fled to states like Illinois that have massive gerrymandering in them themselves, right? So what were they really saying with that message? Nothing, right? Rogue Democrats returned to Texas earlier this week, ending their protests after completely racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines for purposefully breaking quorum and leaving the state legislature unable to conduct business. During their boycott of the legislature, the Democrat lawmakers rallied support for their cause from Democrats in other states. Several Democrat governors had voiced support for gerrymandering their state maps in retribution, right? So they're mad that Texas is gerrymandering, so what are they going to do? No, we're not going to be the bigger person, not gerrymander our states. We're going to gerrymander them even more to get back at you, Texas. Screw you. We're going to be the bigger people here, right? So I've talked a lot about this before. Like I said, I'm writing a paper that has a lot to do on this that will be published very soon on my Substack. If you're not subscribed to that, go and do that. Link in the description down below. Link in my X bio. All of it's there. And I'll make the announcement on X whenever that does come out. But, gerrymandering is never okay, no matter who does it, right? It hurts everyone except for the party it benefits, right? It does not benefit us as the voter, right? Even if you are a Republican. If you're a Republican in Texas, it doesn't benefit you, right? All it means is that your district is being drawn more extremely to allow that district to be a Republican district, which might sound great in the short term for Republicans, right? But how would you feel if the tables were reversed, right? If you're a Republican in Illinois, Illinois is heavily gerrymandered, right? There are hundreds of thousands of Illinois voters who are disenfranchised because they have no shot of their representative actually winning in their district, right? So I'm never a fan of it, no matter who's doing it. Even though the House is very close, right? We'd be better off drawing our districts to be more neutral and more competitive, so that there's a better shot of Congress actually being made up fairly of members that actually represent the districts that they oversee, right? So, go and read my paper for my full thoughts and all that. But I think we're just continuing on a spiral here. Texas has been used as an example because they're a Republican state. Democrats have been doing this forever. Republican states have been doing this forever also. This is nothing new, by the way. So plenty of Democrat states are already gerrymandered. So I think what would be more helpful in this situation actually would be getting a new census conducted, because the census did announce quite a while ago that they miscounted the census. So I think that would actually be more helpful to making Congress a fairer place, is just knowing how many seats every single state is actually entitled to. So that's also my paper. But with that, let's go and move on to our last story of the week. This comes from Blaze Media. So the brutal reality Democrats can't ignore, right? We had blow after blow after blow to the Democrat establishment in this episode today. We had Tulsi Gabbard smacking them across the cheek in national intelligence. We had Trump winning his lawsuit and having it thrown out of court. In some ways, depending on how you look at it, we had a Republican win in Texas with extra congressional seats added, right? I look at it more as a negative, but you might see it as positive. That's your own decision. I can only say what I feel, but another blow to Democrats, it seems. So following a steady streak of political failures, the Democrat Party is facing yet another disastrous reality. Democrats have been bleeding support as they continue to propel progressive candidates to national prominence. Most recently, an analysis from the New York Times showed just how dire the situation is. Between 2020 and 2024 elections, Democrat voter registration plummeted across all 30 states that track voter registration by political affiliation, according to the analysis. Within just those 4 years, the shift towards Republicans add up to about 4.5 million voters. across the board, Americans are fleeing the Democratic Party. For the first time since 2018, more new voters across the country opted to register as Republicans rather than Democrats, according to the analysis. In total, Democrats hemorrhaged about 2.1 million registered voters from 2020 to 2024 across the 30 states that track registration by party. At the same time, Republicans gained 2.4 million new registered voters. This trend has been apparent not just in swing states, but also in deeply partisan ones. In all 4 battleground states in the analysis, including Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, the share of Democrat voters sharply declined. On Election Day, Democrats went from a nearly 11-point average over Republicans in 2020 to just a 6-point edge in 2024, nearly half, with respect to party registration, according to the analysis. So, I think this is great. This is the time right now where we as a party have to be seen as the common sense, more neutral, more welcoming of everyone party, the more catch-all party to continue to move forward, right? We need to continue to let the Democrats dig a deeper and deeper grave for them to go and bury themselves underneath, right? They continue to run extremist candidate after extremist candidate after extremist candidate, election after election after election, right? Digging themselves in a deeper and deeper hole, right? I truly think it'll all culminate in 2028 if they end up running someone like AOC or Gavin Newsom to become the Democrat nominee. Both of them are extreme candidates. Gavin Newsom has been making himself seem like he's this neutral fighting back against Trump. He's taking kind of the Mark Carney approach of like, oh, I'm the only one who's willing to stand up to Trump. Way out here in my ivory tower of California, the farthest state away from Washington, D.C., and make himself seem like this neutral good guy when he's been in office for how long now? And what positive things can we truly say have happened in California under his reign? Almost nothing, right? This is the governor who cleaned up the streets when the Chinese president showed up to San Francisco, right? Cleaned the homeless people out of the way so that it looked good for the photo op. But then as soon as he was gone, they went right back to where they were, right? So there's example of negative things that Gavin Newsom has done. I mean, look no further than the debate that happened between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis on Fox News, right? Go and just watch that in general. You'll see the highlight reel of all the nasty things that Gavin Newsom has done. And that came out, what was it, 2022, 2023 when that came out, right? It was several years ago now. And even more negative things have happened in California since then. So it's truly sad to see a state as beautiful and as great as California just be completely ruined by one man. So it's no wonder they're bleeding voter registration, and for good reason too, right? Imagine being a Democrat right now. No matter who you are in the Democrat Party. Okay, let's just walk through this. Okay,